The sky turned the wrong color at dawn. Levi Dawson stood at his ranch house window, coffee cup cooling in his hand, watching the horizon shift from rose to that sickly greenish gray that promised a killer storm. In 43 years of working this land, he'd learned to read weather like other men read newspapers. This one would be bad. He'd built this ranch alone. Every fence post and water line a testament to what a man could accomplish without depending on anyone. His father had gambled away their family homestead before Levi turned 20. That lesson carved itself deep: trust only yourself, need no one. And you'll never lose everything to another man's weakness. The wind hit first, rattling the windows. Within minutes, snow came sideways in sheets so thick he couldn't see the barn 70 yards away. His Herefords were scattered across the south pasture, 300 head, worth everything he'd built. If they panicked in this white hell, they'd drift with the wind until they died against fences or froze in draws. Levi grabbed his coat and ran for the stable. The mare fought him as he saddled her, ears flat, sensing the storm's fury. He pushed into the wind, snow cutting his face like broken glass. The cold found every gap in his clothing, stealing heat with greedy fingers. He found the cattle already running, blind with fear. He tried turning them toward shelter, but the wind scattered his shouts. His mare stumbled in a hidden ditch, throwing him hard into a snowbank. Levi struggled to his feet, tasting blood. His cattle vanished into white chaos. Everything he'd built, everything he'd sacrificed for, disappearing while he stood helpless in the storm. Then he saw her, a dark figure on horseback, moving through the blizzard like it was Sunday weather. She rode with a grace that seemed impossible in such conditions, her horse responding to the slightest shift of her weight. The cattle turned toward her as if she spoke their language, flowing around her in a river of brown and white. She was gathering his herd, driving them south with uncanny skill. Levi remounted and followed, more witness than help. The woman worked with absolute focus, reading the land beneath the snow, anticipating where the cattle would break, positioning herself to guide rather than chase. She moved like water, like wind, like something wild the storm couldn't touch. When he finally reached the big southern barn, his entire herd stood safe inside. The woman was unharnessing her exhausted horse, checking its legs with practiced hands. "Who are you?" His voice came out rough. She looked up briefly, eyes the color of creek water. "Does it matter? You just saved 300 head of cattle. They needed saving." She returned to her horse, dismissing him. Levi watched her work, noting the economy of her movements, the way she touched animals with authority and gentleness both. This was no drifter who'd learned ranching last summer. "At least tell me your name." "Kara. That's it, just Kara." She moved past him to check the cattle, running her eyes over each animal with the assessment of someone who knew exactly what to look for. "Storm's not done yet. You got feed stored here." They worked through the howling day in near silence. She showed him where his hay bales needed shifting, which water troughs needed breaking ice, which calf looked colicky. She knew cattle the way he did from a lifetime of living with them. As darkness fell and the storm intensified, Levi tried again. "Come inside. You can't stay in this barn all night. I'm used to rougher. At least, I appreciate the offer." Her voice stayed polite but firm. "The tack room's fine. Got a stove. Got a cot. I've slept in worse." She disappeared into the small room at the barn's far end, closing the door with quiet finality. Levi stood in the snow between barn and house, the storm screaming around him. A stranger had appeared from nowhere and saved everything he couldn't save alone. She wouldn't accept his thanks, wouldn't explain herself, wouldn't even come inside from the cold. He walked back to his empty house, more confused than he'd been in years. The storm lasted 3 days. Each morning, Levi found Kara already working when he reached the barn. She'd checked the cattle, broken ice in the water troughs, cleaned stalls that needed it. She worked like someone trying to outrun something. On the second day, He brought coffee and breakfast biscuits to the barn. She accepted them with a nod but kept moving, kept busy. Her hands bore old scars, the kind that came from wire and hard labor. "You know cattle," he said, watching her examine a heifer's swollen hock. "My father was a rancher." Was her jaw tightened? Levi knew better than to push. He'd been where she was, that place where talking about loss felt like reopening a wound. They worked side by side through the storm's second day, and he found himself noticing things. How she murmured to nervous cattle, calming them with tone more than words. How she automatically checked latches and hinges, the habits of someone raised to maintain things properly. How she moved through cold and exhaustion without complaint. "Where were you headed?" he asked as they forked hay into the mangers. "Nowhere in particular." Riding through a blizzard to nowhere seems unwise. She paused. Pitchfork balanced in her hands. "I saw your cattle scattering, knew where they'd go in this wind, figured I could help." "Why, because they needed it." She returned to work, closing the conversation. By the third day, the storm began losing its fury. Pale light filtered through cracks in the barn walls. Levi went to assess the damaged fences down in 2 places. One shed roof collapsed. Hay stores depleted but survivable. When he returned to the barn at midday, he found Kara in the tack room doorway, pale and swaying. "You need food," he said. "Real food, not biscuits." "I'm fine." "You look like hell." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "Sweet talker." "I mean it. Come up to the house. I've got stew on." "I appreciate what you're trying to do." Her voice gentled. "But I don't need charity. You've got your cattle safe? Storm's breaking? I'll be moving on. To nowhere in particular. That's right?" Levi studied her, this woman who'd saved everything he owned and wouldn't accept a hot meal in payment. Pride recognized pride. "At least let me pay you for the work. 3 days of skilled labor." "No. It's not charity, it's wages." "I don't want your money." She turned back into the tack room, gathering her few belongings into a worn canvas bag. Frustration flared in Levi's chest. "Why did you help me if you won't let me help you back?" She stopped, back to him. When she spoke, her voice carried weight. "Because your cattle were dying. That's reason enough." Through the barn's main doors, pale sunlight broke through thinning clouds. The storm was ending. She'd be gone within the hour, and he'd never understand why she came or where she'd go. "At least stay until tomorrow," he heard himself say. "Roads will be better. I could use help checking the full damage." She faced him, creek water eyes searching his face. Whatever she saw there made her shoulders drop slightly. "One more day." She agreed. "Then I'm gone." And that night, Levi lay in his empty house listening to silence instead of wind. He thought about the woman sleeping in his barn, wondered what she was running from, why she helped strangers she'd never see again. He wondered why it mattered to him. Levi found her at dawn on the 4th morning, collapsed in the barn aisle between the cattle stalls. His heart stopped. Then he was running, dropping to his knees beside her. She was breathing but unconscious, her skin burning with fever. When he lifted her, she weighed almost nothing. He carried her to the house, his mind racing. 3 days of nonstop work in freezing conditions. Probably not eating enough. Sleeping in an unheated tack room. She'd worked herself past exhaustion for his cattle. Levi laid her in his guest room, piled blankets over her shaking form, started water boiling for broth. He'd nursed sick calves and injured horses. People couldn't be much different. The fever lasted 3 days. She drifted in and out, sometimes lucid, sometimes lost in dreams that made her cry out. In those fevered hours, her story came in fragments. "The drought came in June," she mumbled once, eyes unfocused. "Grass turned brown by July, creek dried up. Papa said it would break. It didn't break." Levi sat beside the bed, cooling her forehead with damp cloths. Had to sell the herd piece by piece. Every calf. Every heifer. Papa watched them loaded on trucks like watching his children leave. Her voice broke. Last cow went in September. He died in October. Just stopped. Doctor said heart failure. I know better. He died of losing everything. Easy now, Levi murmured. You're safe here. Sarah Kara Morrison, she whispered. That's my whole name. Papa called me Kara because I kicked like one before I was born. Later that night, when her fever spiked again, Levi shared his own story. Maybe she'd remember, maybe not. But speaking to her sleeping face felt easier than carrying it alone. My father gambled, he said quietly. Cards, horses, anything with odds. Lost our ranch when I was 19. My mother left him. I stayed until the bank took it. He paused. Swore I'd build something no one could take. Spent 24 years building these fences, buying this land piece by piece. Never borrowed money I couldn't pay back tomorrow. Never needed help from anyone. He looked at her fever-flushed face. Until now. Until you rode through that storm like some kind of miracle and saved what I couldn't save alone. On the third night, her fever broke. Levi had dozed off in the chair beside her bed. His neck kinked at an uncomfortable angle. When he woke, pale dawn light filtered through the curtains, and her eyes were open, clear, watching him. Your cattle. Her voice came out as a rasp. Relief flooded through him. Safe. All of them safe. Tears slid silently down her temples into her hair. Good. That's good. He helped her drink water, watched color slowly return to her face. She looked around the room, registering where she was, how she'd gotten there. You collapsed in the barn, he explained. Fourth morning. You worked yourself sick. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be better. The hint of a smile touched her lips. Then her face crumpled. I wasn't strong enough to save my father's ranch. Thought maybe I could save someone else's. Levi reached out slowly, giving her time to refuse, and took her scarred hand in his. You did save it. You saved everything. They sat in the quiet dawn. Two people who'd lost everything they'd built. Holding on to something neither could quite name. Kara recovered slowly, and Levi discovered she was as stubborn about accepting help as he'd ever been. She insisted on getting up the day after her fever broke, though she could barely walk to the kitchen. She demanded to see the cattle, to check on them herself. She tried to help with chores and nearly fainted mucking a stall. Sit down before you fall down, Levi ordered, guiding her to a hay bale. I can work. You can barely stand. I don't take charity. Her jaw set in a line he recognized, the same one he saw in his own mirror. It's not charity if you're earning it, which you already did, saving my herd. He crouched to meet her eyes. Stay through calving season. April and May. That's 7 weeks. Help me then, when you're strong enough to actually help. Kara studied his face, suspicion and hope warring in her expression. Wages, fair wages for skilled work. Where would I stay? Foreman's cabin. Been empty since old Martin retired. Needs some fixing up, but it's sound. I pay rent. Levi bit back a smile. Fine, $10 a month, 20. You're negotiating to pay me more. I'm negotiating for dignity. Her Creekwater eyes held his. I stay in that cabin. I work for wages, I pay rent, nothing given, nothing owed. That's the only way I'll do this. He recognized the iron in her voice. It was the same iron that had driven her through that storm to save cattle that weren't hers. Deal, he said, offering his hand. Her grip was still weak, but her shake was firm. 2 days later, Levi heard horses coming up the road. He stepped onto the porch to see Tom and Eleanor Patterson from the neighboring ranch, along with Doc Wheeler and his wife Martha. Heard you weathered the storm all right, Tom called, dismounting. His eyes went past Levi to where Kara stood in the barn doorway. Also heard you've got company. This is Kara Morrison. She's working for me through calving season. Eleanor's eyebrows rose. Working for you. Skilled ranch hand. Knows cattle better than most men I've hired. I see. Eleanor's tone carried judgment sharp as January wind. And she's staying where? Exactly, Foreman's cabin. Of course. The older woman's lips thinned. Levi, people will talk. Let them. The words surprised him as much as them. He'd spent his life building respectability, avoiding gossip, but something about Eleanor's tone made anger rise in his chest. Doc Wheeler cleared his throat. Not our business how you run your ranch. Levi, we just wanted to check you didn't lose too much in the storm. Lost some fence and a shed roof. Could have lost everything. Levi's voice carried across the yard. Miss Morrison drove my cattle to shelter when I couldn't. I owe her more than I can repay. Kara turned and disappeared into the barn. After the neighbors left, Levi found her throwing her belongings into her canvas bag. What are you doing? Leaving. I won't damage your reputation. My reputation isn't your concern. It should be. She faced him, anger and hurt mixing in her expression. I know what people think. Woman alone, staying on a bachelor's ranch. They'll call me a whore, and you a fool. But they can call me whatever they want. Easy to say when it's not your life they're destroying. Levi took a breath, steadying himself. You saved my livelihood, that's the truth. Anyone who can't see that isn't worth worrying about. Boy, you don't understand. I understand you've been hurt. I understand you're running. I understand you don't trust easily. He kept his voice gentle. I also understand I need help. You need work. And the foreman's cabin sits empty. Everything else is just noise. Kara's hands stilled on her bag. Why do you care what happens to me? The question stopped him. He didn't have a good answer, only the truth. I don't know, he admitted. But I do. April turned the world soft and green. Snow melted into running streams. Grass pushed through warming soil. The first robin appeared, singing its territorial claim from Levi's porch roof. Kara moved into the foreman's cabin, and they fell into a rhythm. She was up before dawn, checking cattle before Levi finished his coffee. She knew her way around a ranch with the ease of long practice. When a calf got stuck during birth, she rolled up her sleeves without being asked. When a fence needed mending, she already had wire cutters in hand. They worked mostly in comfortable silence, the kind that came from shared purpose. Levi found himself watching her when he thought she wouldn't notice the way she touched newborn calves with almost painful gentleness, how she stared toward the mountains at sunset with visible grief in her eyes. One evening in late April, a heifer went into difficult labor. The calf was breech, and even with both of them working, it took 2 hours of exhausting effort. When they finally pulled the calf free and got it breathing, Levi and Kara sat in the straw, exhausted and covered in birth fluids. Come on, Levi said, standing with a groan. I've got whiskey that'll take the ache out. They sat on his porch, passing the bottle, watching the sun paint the mountains golden purple. The newborn calf nursed vigorously in the pen below, its mother licking it with devoted attention. That never gets old, Kara said softly. Life winning. Your father taught you ranching? She nodded, took a pull from the bottle. He said a good rancher listens to the land, pays attention to what it's saying when the grass is stressed, when the cattle are uneasy, when weather's changing. Her voice caught. I forgot how to hear it after he died. Everything went quiet. Levi understood that silence. I spent 20 years building fences around this place. Thought if I made them strong enough, I'd be safe. Turns out building fences around yourself don't make you safe, just makes you alone. She looked at him, creek water eyes catching the last light. You're not alone anymore. The words hung between them, meaning more than either would say. Levi's chest tightened with something he hadn't felt in years, the dangerous warmth of wanting someone close. Neither are you, he said quietly. Their hands rested on the porch railing, inches apart. Kara shifted, and their fingers brushed. The contact sparked through him like touching a fence wire. She felt it too. He saw it in the way her breath caught. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Kara stood, too quickly, nearly stumbling. Early morning tomorrow. Kara, thank you for the whiskey. She descended the porch steps, walking fast toward her cabin. Levi watched her go, lamplight appearing in her window moments later. The robin sang its evening song. And for the first time in years, Levi actually really heard it the way Kara's father had taught her to listen. The land was speaking. He just didn't know yet what it was saying. Late May brought Richard Thornton, the banker from Casper, driving up in his black automobile that seemed wrong against the ranch's worn beauty. Levi met him in the ranch office, knowing what was coming. You didn't get a personal visit from a banker unless the news was bad. Cattle prices have dropped, Thornton said, spreading papers on the desk. Way down from where they were last fall, and feed costs are up. That storm damage you mentioned, fencing repair, hay losses, veterinary bills, it all adds up. Levi studied the numbers, his stomach sinking. How bad? You're near your credit limit. You need a strong calf crop and better prices come autumn, or you'll have to sell off land to cover debts. How much land? Quarter section, maybe more. The land his father had lost flashed through Levi's memory. History trying to repeat itself, only this time through bad luck instead of bad choices. There's another issue, Thornton continued. Your summer help. Can you afford to keep her on? Levi's jaw tightened. That's my business. It's mine when you're borrowing my bank's money. The banker's voice carried no malice, just reality. I'm not saying let her go because of small-town talk. I'm saying the numbers don't support the expense. After Thornton left, Levi sat alone in the office, running calculations. The banker was right. If he kept Kara through summer, paid her fair wages, and prices didn't recover, he'd lose part of the ranch. But letting her go felt like tearing something vital from his chest. He found her in the south pasture, fixing a section of fence. She looked up as he approached, and her smile faded when she saw his face. What's wrong? He told her straight, no softening it. Prices are down. Storm damage cost more than I thought. I can't afford to keep you through summer. Kara's face went carefully blank. I understand. I can pay you through end of May. Give you a reference. I said I understand. Her voice stayed level, but her hands gripped the fence wire too tight. When do you want me gone? It's not about wanting. When all the end of the month. She nodded once, turned back to the fence, hammered a staple with 3 precise strikes. I'll be out by then. Levi wanted to say something more, but what that he didn't want her to go. That the thought of the ranch without her felt like losing, something he hadn't known he needed. Instead, he walked back to the house, leaving her alone with the fence. That evening, Kara appeared at his door. I have a proposal, she said. Can I come in? They sat at his kitchen table, and she spread out a hand-drawn map. Her father's ranch, 2 counties over. I still own it. 160 acres. Good water source, decent grass, solid house and barn, worthless without cattle. Kara, hear me out. Her voice held the same iron as when they'd negotiated her work. Stake me to a herd. 25 heifers from your surplus stock. I'll pay you back in calves over 3 years. We run both ranches, share resources and labor, your place and mine, together. Levi stared at the map. That's risky, for both of us. Yes. If prices don't recover, we both could lose. Yes. Why would you propose this? She met his eyes. Because maybe losing everything once doesn't mean you can't build something beautiful. Because I'm tired of running. Because she stopped, swallowed. Because I believe in good bones. Your ranch has them. Mine does too. Together. We'd be stronger. or we'd both fail. Maybe. The lamplight caught the determination in her face. But I'd rather fail trying than spend my life afraid to try. Levi looked at the map, at her fierce hope, at the future she was offering, partnership, risk, trust, everything he'd spent 20 years avoiding. "Let me think about it," he said. She nodded, left him alone with impossible choices. Levi rode out to Kara's father's ranch at dawn, needing to see it for himself. The property broke his heart. The house stood solid but shabby, paint peeling, porch boards warped. Fields had gone to weeds, fences sagging. The barn needed work. But underneath the neglect, he saw what she'd described good bones, sound structure, a ranch built by someone who knew what they were doing. He walked through the empty house, imagining her growing up here, her father teaching her to read weather, to understand cattle, to listen to what the land was saying. He pictured them losing the herd calf by calf, watching their livelihood disappear. Her father dying of a broken heart, leaving her alone with worthless land and nowhere to go. Levi sat on the porch steps, looking at abandoned dreams. "You came to see if I'm crazy." He turned. Kara sat on her horse at the property edge, watching him. "Or a fool," she added, dismounting. "I came to see what I'd be investing in." She tied her horse, climbed the steps, sat beside him. "It's a mess. Good bones, though. My father built things to last." Her voice roughened. "He said a ranch is more than land and cattle. It's a promise that what you build matters, that it'll outlast you. I want to honor that." They sat in silence, looking at overgrown fields that wanted working. "I'm scared," Levi admitted. "Of losing money. Of wanting this. Of trusting that it could work." He faced her. "I spent my whole life making sure I never needed anyone. Needing someone gives them power to hurt you." "I know." Kara's shoulder pressed against his. "My father needed that herd to survive. The drought killed him just as sure as his heart failing. When you need something and lose it, the loss destroys you. So why ask me to risk that?" She was quiet a long time. "Because maybe the other option, never needing anything, never building anything that matters, maybe that's a slower kind of dying. At least if we try and fail, we'll have tried. That's more than I've done since he died." Levi looked at the ranch, at her, at the choice in front of him. His whole life had been about protecting himself, safety, control, isolation. Kara was offering the opposite: risk, partnership, connection. He thought about his empty house, his solitary meals, his 20 years of careful loneliness. Thought about finding her in that storm, watching her save what he couldn't save alone. "Partners," he said, offering his hand. Her smile was the sun breaking through. Partners. That evening, they sat at his kitchen table, drawing up the partnership agreement by lamplight. Levi would provide 25 bred heifers. Kara would repay with calves over 3 years. They'd share equipment, labor, and resources, work both properties, build something neither could build alone. They talked numbers and schedules with careful practicality, both pretending this was only about cattle and land. But when their hands brushed reaching for the same paper, the contact lingered. When their eyes met, something deeper than business passed between them. Finally, Kara signed the agreement, her handwriting neat and determined. Levi added his signature below hers. "This is really happening," she said quietly. Second thoughts. Terrified thoughts. She smiled. But good ones. She left near midnight, and Levi watched her lamp move back to the foreman's cabin. On paper, they were business partners. In practice, they'd just tied their futures together in ways that had nothing to do with cattle. He thought about her father's words that a ranch was a promise that what you build matters. Thought about building something with Kara, not for safety or control, but because some things were worth the risk of losing. The lamp in her cabin burned late. So did his. May blurred into June, June into July, July into August. The partnership worked like they'd been doing it for years. They moved cattle between properties, shared the work of fence repair and hay cutting. Kara's house came alive again, fresh paint, fixed porch, curtains and windows. Levi helped her restore the barn, and she helped him expand his hay storage. His heifers settled into her pastures, her fields greened under careful management. The neighboring ranchers' skepticism gradually shifted. They saw the results: strong calves, healthy herds, two ranches running better together than either had alone. Tom Patterson grudgingly admitted Levi might have known what he was doing after all. Even Eleanor stopped by with a pie, her version of an apology. But as the partnership thrived, the careful distance between Levi and Kara became harder to maintain. They were together, constantly working, planning, sharing meals when it made sense to eat together rather than separately. Levi found himself noticing everything about her: the way she laughed at a clumsy calf, how she hummed while working, the line of her shoulders against sunset light. He wanted to touch her, wanted to close the space they kept between themselves. But the partnership was working, and starting something more could ruin everything if it didn't last. So they stayed careful, professional, partners in business and nothing more. Late August brought blessed rain, the kind that soaked into thirsty earth and promised good autumn grass. Levi was checking his fences when he heard Kara calling him, excitement in her voice. He found her in her barn, standing in a birthing stall, crying. His heart lurched. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." She laughed through tears, gesturing to a newborn calf nursing vigorously from one of the heifers he'd given her. "Everything's right. First calf from our partnership. She's perfect." The calf was red with a white face, sturdy legs, bright eyes. She nursed with determined enthusiasm while her mother licked her dry. Levi stepped into the stall, rain drumming on the barn roof, and realized this wasn't just a calf. It was proof. Proof that what they'd built together worked. Proof that taking the risk had mattered. "We did it," Kara whispered. "We actually did it." She turned to him, rain-damp and radiant, joy breaking across her face like sunrise. And Levi couldn't hold back anymore. He cupped her face in his scarred hands. "Kara Morrison, you saved more than my cattle. You gave me back more than a herd." Her hands rose to his wrists, holding him there. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, both of them testing this new territory. Then it deepened, months of careful distance finally breaking. She tasted like rain and hope. Her hands slid into his hair, pulling him closer. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Kara laughed softly. "What now?" she whispered. "Now we stop pretending this is only about cattle. Thank God. I was running out of ways to avoid you." He kissed her again, softer this time, learning the shape of her mouth, the way she sighed against him. Rain fell steady and gentle outside, blessing instead of storm. The calf nursed peacefully behind them, first fruit of their partnership. "Stay," Levi said against her lips. "Not in the foreman's cabin. Stay with me." What will people say? That we're partners, that we're building something together. He pulled back enough to see her eyes. "That I love you." Her breath caught. "You love me?" "Yes." "Since when?" "Probably since you rode through that storm like you owned it." Kara's smile was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "I love you too. Since you carried me into your house and sat beside my bed for 3 days." They stood in the barn doorway, rain falling around them, the newborn calf behind them, and kissed until the rain softened to mist. September brought harvest weather, clear skies, cool nights, the smell of curing hay. Levi and Kara combined their operations officially, building connecting fences between properties, discussing which house to live in. "Yours has more room," Kara said, standing at his kitchen window with morning coffee. "Yours has better light," Levi countered. wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. What if we split time? Winters here, summers there. Complicated. We're good at complicated. She leaned back against him. We turned 2 failing ranches into 1 successful operation. We can figure out which house to sleep in. The banker returned in mid-September, reviewing their combined books with growing surprise. I'll be damned, you 2 actually pulled it off. Strong calf crop, healthy herds, shared resources cutting costs. I can extend your credit on better terms. After he left, Levi found Kara on his porch. Their porch now she'd moved in last week, her few belongings mixing with his in an easy domesticity that felt more right than anything in his life. We made it, she said. Really made it. Never doubted you. Liar. You doubted constantly. Maybe a little. He sat beside her, taking her hand. Worth it, though. Eleanor Patterson stopped by that afternoon with another pie. This one a clear offering of friendship. I was wrong about you 2, she admitted. Wrong to judge. You've built something good here. After she left, Tom Patterson lingered. Got a question for you both. Young fellow came through yesterday looking for work. Name's Danny Ross, drifter type, but good with horses. Reminded me of someone. He glanced at Kara meaningfully. She and Levi exchanged looks. Send him over, Kara said. We'll talk to him. Danny Ross arrived the next morning, 19. Skinny. Trying to hide desperation under false confidence. Kara saw herself in him instantly. You know cattle? Levi asked. Some. Grew up on a farm in Nebraska. Lost it last year. Been working odd jobs since. Why should we hire you? The boy's jaw set. Because I'll work harder than anyone else. Because I need this. Because, he stopped. Vulnerability cracking through. Because I got nowhere else to go. Kara stepped forward. I was you 6 months ago. Drifting. Alone. Sure, I'd lost my chance at anything good. She glanced at Levi. Someone gave me a shot anyway. Changed my life. They hired Danny on the spot, gave him the foreman's cabin, made him promise to actually use the stove and not work himself sick like Kara had. He looked at them like they'd offered him the moon. After he left. Levi pulled Kara close. Paying it forward seemed right. That evening. They sat on the porch in old rocking chairs Tom Patterson had given them as a partnership gift. The sun set over their joined herds, his Herefords and her growing stock mixing together peacefully. Danny worked in the distance, already proving himself. You ever regret it? Levi asked. Giving up drifting. Kara laughed. I wasn't drifting. I was lost. There's a difference. She pointed to the cattle in the pasture. That's not just a herd. That's proof that losing everything once doesn't mean you can't build something beautiful. We built something beautiful. Levi agreed, pulling her close. She settled against him, both of them rocking gently. Your father would be proud. Mine too. Think so, building something that lasts, making promises and keeping them. Creating something bigger than ourselves. She looked up at him. That's what they both wanted. We're giving them that. Darkness came softly, stars appearing one by one. Inside, lamps burned warm. The cattle lowed contentedly. Danny's light appeared in the foreman's cabin. Their 2 ranches had become 1 ranch. Stronger together than either was alone. Spring will bring new calves, Kara said quietly. But we've already weathered the worst storm. Levi finished. Together. Together. They rocked in comfortable silence. 2 people who'd lost everything and found something better found each other. Found purpose. Found home. The land had spoken, and they'd learned to listen. Not to the voice of isolation and fear, but to the voice of partnership and hope. Above them, stars wheeled through the endless sky. Around them, the ranch they'd built together breathed with life and promise. Inside each other's arms, They'd found what they'd both been seeking without knowing belonging. Love. And the courage to build something that would outlast them. The storm that brought them together was long past. What they'd built from it was just beginning.